Good morning, Bitcoiners. I hope you're doing well. I'm loving my life. Who can complain? On a day like today, I'm not going to be the one. I'm not going to complain. We're not complaining. We just washed our eyes of the pollen and the allergies that I have, but I'm not going to complain about them. It's just part of springtime. We got the itchiness out. We're going to be fine. We're going to be fine. I don't get them so bad. My little daughter's eyes were all swollen yesterday, too. She gets them as well, a little bit. One of my daughters. Yo, Chatelet escaped the Matrix. Indeed, MMK007 escaped the Matrix. Yo, MMK. Chef Zero says, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Ephesians 6:2. We'll be talking about that today, indeed. Word, Chef Zero. Chef Zero says, New Testament has very little to say what happens to the Christian when he or she dies. The emphasis of the New Testament is on the day of the Lord and the coming of the kingdom of God to the earth, indeed. Blessings, beloved Bampians. Now let's do some Bitcoin talking. We're going to be talking Bitcoin all day. Escape the Matrix, says Chef Fire, and salute. Top of the morning to you, Bitcoiners. Les Canadiens live to play another day. They did win, indeed. I listened to that game last night on the radio. We had fun. It was exciting. I didn't think they were going to win, honestly. I was sort of tuned out, expecting them to lose. I've been wrong about this whole series, it turns out. I had a sneaky suspicion they were going to lose at the start. They ended up running away at the beginning and kind of whooping their ass. And then I thought, wow, they're going to whip their ass and just go on. And then that turned around and they gave up the whole thing. And then I was sure they had wasted the opportunity and that they were collapsing. That didn't happen either. So I got it wrong multiple times. Good morning, gang. Good morning, ES Empire. Good morning, Awakeners. Heinlein, greetings from Charlottesville, Virginia. Biden's ground zero. Noah Simpson at ground zero, indeed. It is that time. It is the moment. Seize the day, says Seaberger. We're seizing the day. Good morning, indeed. Correct, Chef. The kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Happy Tuesday, everyone. Chatelet, my sweet summer children, says barely 45. Indeed, Chatelet, don't sit on those hands. Smash that thumbs up while you're waiting. Indeed. Hello, gang. Glad to be here with you again. Hola, que andes, says Pioneering Freedom. We're having fun today. We're having fun. Do you think Canada is still there in existence? No, it's over, guys. It's over. We're talking about the end of Canada today again. Careful out there. People coming out of the woods with their pitchforks and torches, faces snarling. Indeed, yes, Habs win from Chicagoland. They win. It was exciting. Weirdly, I was listening on the radio, but not even like the over-the-air radio, the radio station, but on the internet. And there must have been a 5-second delay or something because the whole city, you could hear it everywhere. And I knew they had scored. And then I heard it on the radio, but it was a weird tip. Something similar happened to me once when I was in. So I've told you this story before. I used to love the Olympic Games, right? I was like a big Olympics fan. And I had intended to go to the 2008 Beijing Olympics. I had actually visited the stadium when they were building it in 2004. That was the first time I went to Beijing. And so I just graduated from law school in May of 2008. And I went to Israel first, but that only was like 2 weeks or whatever. And then when I got back, I went immediately with my wife to South Korea for the summer. And we were moving to Japan. I was starting a law job in September that year in Japan. So I said, we'll go to Korea and then we'll make our way to the Olympics and we'll go check it out. So we get to Korea and we got summer jobs at a summer camp thing, and it was a lot of fun. But then they did some weird visa thing that you were allowed to come from your real country. So if I flown from Canada, I was going to be allowed into Beijing. I didn't understand. It wasn't the same if I was coming on a Korean flight. Somehow they weren't given visas, or I don't know what it was. in the end, we weren't able to go to Beijing and check out the Olympics. So I enjoyed the Olympics from Seoul. And the home I had rented was on a hill. And so, weird. I was trying to watch a lot of it, and it was nice because it was on the normal time. I ended up just turning the TV on one day to see Usain Bolt, who I'd been a big fan of so far that year. So I was waiting for him. So I saw the race live. But anyway, long story short, sitting up on this hill, I had a great big patio out front, and the whole 20 million person city just rolls out below me on this hill that I lived on. And I would watch the baseball games. I think Korea won the gold medal that year. I think they won the gold. And the baseball tournament took over Korea. It became like the biggest thing. I think it was the last Olympics with baseball or something like that. And the whole city, I'll never forget it. The entire city, with every play, every win, every out, I could hear the whole city, rah, because it's like 20 million people pretty crammed in there. And it was one of the most amazing experiences I've ever had. I didn't even need to watch the game. I was just watching it out on the deck. You could buy little TV antennas for your phone back then, by the way. It was hilarious. I've never seen it here to this day. I still don't understand how we never got this tech. In 2008, and people would do it all the time, you'd buy a little television antenna and you'd plug it into your phone, and you'd pull up the television antenna. You could just watch TV on your phone, like television, like from the air television. And so I had one of those on my phone, and that's how I was watching it out on the porch. And so then, yeah, like I said, just the whole game, I could tell what was happening based on how the crowds were reacting, how the city was reacting. It was one of the neatest sort of a city is organic type of thing I've ever experienced. So anyway, long story short, I had a good time indeed. So speaking of good times, everyone, we're going to have a good time today. But first, let's acknowledge that is a major sunrise. We're loving the sun. The sun is up, and Bitcoin is running 78,000 trash tokens. We're doing great on the trash tokens, everyone. Not bad. Not bad at all. What else is there left to do but to have a coffee and talk about what's new? You're not going to believe some of the NPC stories I have today. Things are, it's not going great, guys. They're having some tough times out in NPC land. They're having some tough times. Some scientists come in. It's not good. It's not good. Now we're hearing the Ebola outbreak, everyone. It didn't go that great with the... Are we still at 78? Someone's asking me. Oh, no, 76. Never mind, 77. 76, 77. I had that wrong. 78K, that's it. Yeah. NPR looking better. NPCs, no, not looking good. 76, yes, JJ Fox. I had it wrong. It hadn't updated. Normally it does update. So the old what was the last outbreak that we had last week? What was the hantavirus? The hantavirus didn't work out. The rat poo virus. The bat one from a couple of years ago, that one worked. The rat poo thing didn't work. Now they're going back to the old one we all know about. It's Ebola is coming now, guys. Who concerned about scale and speed of Ebola outbreak? We got the Ebola. There's an American with Ebola. He's coming out of Congo, and now he's in Germany or something. So mega Ebola breakout now, guys. Next one up. And wouldn't you know, according to the Canadian news, at a crucial moment, everyone, for pandemic preparedness, experts say, world, you're not ready for another pandemic, guys. It's up to you. You need to believe people more. You're not believing them enough. Government funding cutbacks, you gotta pay more taxes, guys, because people are not buying the pandemic preparedness. And then they got distrust in public health authorities, right? Everyone is at risk. If you keep questioning and you stop paying your taxes, you're totally screwed because you're not helping anyone, right? You got to help. That's the most important thing. We're at a crucial time in the history of pandemic preparedness, says Joy Frumpy, Joy Fumafee, or Pumafee. I'm not sure. But she's telling you, as a global community, everyone who has the responsibility for the well-being and development of their people should be concerned, because we are definitely not ready for the next pandemic. It's nature's wake-up call. If anything, the recent hantavirus, which includes death, it's a wake-up call, says Peter Hotez. Hotez is back. Hotez. We love him. He's back in the news. He is a professor of pediatrics and molecular virology and the dean of the National School of Tropical Medicine at Baylor College of Medicine in Texas. Mother Nature is not playing coy with us, he said, likening it to the scene from the 1980s Ghostbusters movie. Hotez, quoting Ghostbusters, bring back the viruses. Mistrust in government and public health agencies combined with attacks on scientific institutions. That's you scumbags in the chat. That's all you scum sitting around here saying Peter Hotez, scary, you bastards. You're not taking this very seriously at all. Come on, it's all very dark and very dangerous because that disinformation campaign is thwarting a lot of really important public health responses. Guys, it's really, 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 very super, really, really important. Listen to me, please. When we talk about national security, we're quick to talk about defense, right? But we don't think about pandemics. We don't even think about pandemics. And yet we learned through COVID how destabilizing they are. Help me. Canada's prepared. Of course, Canada is much better than the United States because they still believe their health authorities. Thank goodness Canada is hanging in there and still sticking close to the science. Thank goodness Canada, guys. Thank goodness Canada is still sticking in there. Not like those stupid Americans, those idiots, those morons. Thank God we have Canada. Thank God. I got more expert help, though. It's not just Peter Hotez, guys. It's a little hot in the United States today. People are saying there's a heat wave coming. It's going to be in the 90s, right? Thank God. We got 2 journalists plus experts on this case. Thank the Lord. Hot weather is coming. Experts say this thermostat temp saves money. You want to save money? We finally have it, guys. Thank God. I forgot. I had to turn the air conditioning on last night because it got hot here. And I was sitting again and I was actually paralyzed. I didn't know what to do. I said, okay, I've got to set the temperature on this thermostat again. I've done this before. I can do it. What did the experts say? And I forgot. I had to get out my AI. I had to spend tokens on my AI yesterday. But luckily there's a news story here just today, fresh. I don't need to spend. I'm going to save you AI tokens if you too are paralyzed with indecision standing in front of your thermostat. Thank God we have another story from the experts helping us set our thermostat. 2 journalists. You need 2 for this one. Gary Gayson and Manahil Ahmad. So that's the 2 that are telling us what to do. Oh, we got a bonus. How to stay cool. We got a bonus. According to the EPA, the optimal AC temperature for peak comfort and energy efficiency is 78 degrees. Boom. Don't forget that, everyone. Finally, they're there. Drop to 7. Yeah, exactly. Then when you're at work, set the temperature 7 degrees higher. This is a new iteration here, guys. That's why it took 2 journalists, because the story, the plot is thickening on how to set your thermostat. In the evening, drop the temperature to 78, but when you go to bed, increase it by 4. So, ready, everyone? This is from the experts with 2 journalists helping you set the temperature in your house. Okay, so 78. But when you're at work, go up 7. Okay? And then when you come back, drop it back to 78. So minus the 7. Okay? But when you go to bed, right, go back up 4. So up 7 when you're away at work, but then back down, but then back up another 4. Okay? 7 in the day when you're out, 4 at night when you're asleep, extra. Okay? So that means you want around 85 according to the experts. Okay, according to the experts. So a programmable thermostat can help schedule. So you want to go out and buy a programmable thermostat because this shit's not simple, guys. And if you don't do it, the world is going to burn in hell. And if that doesn't get you, then you're going to get burned from the viruses coming from all this weather, from the heat, from the increased heat from global warming. But thank God. Okay, so they went out. I wonder it takes two journalists to write this breaking news. It's in news. It's in the news. Experts, thermostats, right? But thank God they've also put this freebie in there, right? This free little bit of wisdom. It's like sometimes, you walk up a mountain to meet the wise hermit, the monk for wisdom, right? And then wonder what you're going to get, and he gives you some, and then he just throws it. You have a question for him, and then you ask the question, and then he just throws in a freebie, right? Just a freebie, more wisdom, right? Guys, ready? How to remain cool during the hot weather. Okay, ready? Curtains. Okay, experts say curtains can help you stay warm. Curtains. Limit heat producing appliances during the day. That means don't run your dryer, don't run your dishwasher. Okay, cross ventilate rooms, open windows at night, guys. At night. Okay, I know you're sitting there, you're sweating your balls off. You now have your temperature set at 85 because you're about to go to work. Okay, but when you get home, it's a little colder at night. So then what you do is you open your window and the cold air will enter your home. It will do that. Okay, trust me, it will. Check the weather stripping on doors and windows. Okay, that's pretty good, right? Install ceiling fans and portable fans. Guys, you can get a fan, and that's not an admirer. You can get it blows wind. It blows wind, the experts are saying to you. They blow the wind, okay? It goes over your body, and it can actually cool you down. What's the best temperature to sleep at? They're just giving stuff away, right? Use fans. More advice on fans here. A ceiling portable fan can help circulate the air and create a cooling breeze. Light bedding. You can take a cool shower. Stay hydrated if it's hot. Thank God. Yeah, no. I'm gonna share. I'm gonna put it in the chat. Okay, I'm gonna put this into the. I'm gonna put it into the description of the show. We need it, right? You need to slow down with the advice, says Doug T. I'm writing with chalk to save paper. You are doing great, Doug T. You're doing great, blowing something, and it's not just wind. So thank God. Set it to 88. It's so good. Okay, it's just perfect. So now we all know the experts and two journalists are helping us survive. They're helping us survive the heat. Thank God. We got other problems though, guys. It's not just the heat. We need survival for other things. Are hailstones getting bigger due to climate change? Scientific studies suggest that a warmer climate does not necessarily lead to more frequent hail, but rather to more severe hailstorms with larger hailstones. The science is in, guys. It's not looking good. You're going to get hit by a massive, incredibly large hailstone because of the global warming. And we're getting, this is not good either. Seabird habitats shrink as the ocean is heating up, everybody. The ocean is so hot that the birds can't fly on it anymore. They're leaving. The birds are moving inland. Climate change could push seabirds into smaller habitats and force them to fly farther to survive. Oh my God, we know exactly where the birds live on the shoreline and the coast. And it turns out that the ocean is heating up and there's nowhere left for the birds to live. The birds are homeless because of the hot ocean. Uh-oh. This one every day. Luckily, we have this story every day because I always forget. Every day this is in there, and I always wonder what experts say seasonal allergies. Why experts say seasonal allergies are getting worse. I just every day I wonder why seasonal allergies are getting worse. And then luckily every day I come to the news and there's this same story every single day. A group of Canadian, but because it's so important. Okay, you think I'm criticizing this story for being in the news every single day? That's not what I'm doing. It's that important. It's as important as the story about how to set your thermostat. That's why I show you that story every week when it's written, even if it's written by two different journalists. These are such important stories, and we can forget them. But luckily, here we've got Daniel Coates, the director of Aerobiology Research Laboratories, and they monitor pollen. And they said they monitor this like we monitor the situation here. They monitor the pollen, right? They count the pollen in the air, right? Obviously, you can. It's easy. You can just count the pollen, right? It's so simple. Count the pollen. And then his lab suggests pollen levels across Canada have doubled. We had this great data set from 20 years ago when we also counted the pollen in the air, and then 40 years ago. We have all this data. We've been collecting pollen data for so long, and we can just compare it over generations even, right? We find the mollusk shells, we find the tree rings. We have thousands, we have millions of years of pollen data. And that's how we know. And of course, right, this is what we know, climate change is partly to blame, guys. I know the story is there every day, but it's important to remember it's getting worse because pollen loves warm weather. When you have longer periods of warm weather, science and data have proven, the data has proven that you're going to see more pollen in the air as well. Okay, so that's what's going on, guys. We got more pollen again. I know you say this story happens every day. That's how important it is. That's how many experts we need to talk to about the pollen in the air because it's bothering you and it's bothering me. And it's just another instance for us to remember global warming causes this. And so, your eyes are itchy. Global warming. Global warming. Uh-oh. Worst case global warming projection cut by 1 degree as cheap solar and wind slash emissions. Cheap renewables are lowering predicted 2100 temperatures. Yay! It's going to be 1 degree cooler in 2100. I believe it. We're doing great. But it's not all good news. It's not all good news, everyone. You think that's all good news? Turns out no, and no. We get this story. Trump distorts recent revisions of scientific projections of global warming. So although it's 1 degree down in 2100, of course, Trump is out there distorting this news. President Trump recently blasted the accuracy of global warming projections in a Truth Social post that itself painted a distorted view of the science, projections, and how the international community discusses climate policy. The international community doesn't discuss it the way Trump does. Okay? No way. And now we get this, right? This is more Trump business. Here he is again. Scientists now say the worst case climate scenario is implausible. Here's what it means. A UN panel on climate change seems poised to retire RCP 8.5, a scenario in which the world does nothing to curb planet warming emissions in its projections. There you go. It's being retired. So everything's changing. That's great news. Great news, everyone. And finally, my last story before we get into the news. You're not going to believe this one. This is the Chinese mayor out in California. And of course, racial backlash erupts online after a California mayor admits to being an agent for China. Can you believe the racial backlash? Can you believe the racial backlash? I mean, if you're going to be a spy, fine, but you shouldn't be subjected to racist backlash after for selling America out. Come on, where do we draw the line here, guys? Where do we draw the line? Terrible news, terrible racist backlash. Can hardly believe it. Unreal. What's wrong with you people? What is wrong with those people? How dare they? How dare they? And one more bonus one, just because we did some talking about God earlier in the start. This comes a great one from MSNBC. Here's Katie Tur. Here it's Katie Tur doing it. I'm not going to play the audio because you don't need to hear it all. Here's Katie Tur saying she caught that Mike Johnson. What a fucking loser. Here she says, what about this passage from Mike Johnson declaring that our rights do not derive from government? They come from our creator. Is this putting God above the Declaration of Independence? Is she putting God above the Declaration of Independence? Can you believe? Imagine the Declaration of Independence did something like mention that our rights come from God. Could you imagine? And then someone citing that. Have they put God above? Did Thomas Jefferson put God above the Declaration of Independence? Is that something that happened? Katie's onto it. All of American history is a scam. She figured it out. Thank God we have MSNBC. Thank God. What would we do without Katie Tur? She's brilliant. She's finally cracked the code. Look at her. She caught that. Mike Johnson thinks he can go around talking like that, right? Imagine he said something so stupid, right? That our rights don't come from government. They come from our creator, right? Can you believe it? Can you believe it? I mean, it's the same story. It just keeps happening. What are you going to do, guys? We got big trouble. Big trouble. So that is our NPC news of the day. It's not going great. It's not going great with them. They're having some hard times. I'm going to take a sip of coffee, and then we're going to talk about the real news. How dare you, says MMK007. Exactly. How dare you? All right. So, first story that we got today is Trump came out yesterday and did his typical back and forth, this and that, de-escalation. But here, the important part of it is he's not going to be bombing Iran again in the short term. It sounds like he will do some bomb again if he needs to, but here's the note that he posted yesterday. I've been asked by the Emir of Qatar and the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia and the President of the UAE to hold off on our planned military attack of the Islamic Republic of Iran, which was scheduled for tomorrow, and that serious negotiations are now taking place, and that, in their opinion, as great leaders and allies, a deal will be made which will be very acceptable to the United States of America, as well as the countries in the Middle East and beyond. This deal will include, importantly, no nuclear weapons for Iran. Based on my respect for the above-mentioned leaders, I have instructed Secretary of War Exith, Joint Chiefs of Staff Kane, and the U.S. military that we will not be doing the scheduled attack of Iran tomorrow, and have further instructed them to be prepared to go forward with a full, large-scale assault of Iran on a moment's notice in the event that an acceptable deal is not reached. So here, what you see is, first of all, the Abraham Accords continue to hold. That's been my number one reflection on all of this war. If you go back to the first day that we talked about it, that would be, I guess, March 1st or something like that, February 28th or whenever it started. I said, when we all woke up to the news that the bombing had started, I said, well, the Abraham Accords are holding, so that's the good news. And here you're seeing the Abraham Accords holding even more and for even longer than we realized at the start. So that's good news. But it's not the only thing that happened yesterday. Trump is now showing, I think anyway, his ability to use Iran to create widespread cognitive dissonance. And this is important. Again, if you go back to my hit book, The Bitcoiner's Guide to NPC Management, in that book, if you recall, I discuss how to persuade people when it comes to Bitcoin in ways that are, I don't know about counterintuitive, but are different than you're used to hearing, seeing, and stuff like that. I don't make arguments. And here in the prologue, I specifically say that arguments is not the point of the book, right? What this book isn't is a list of arguments. It's better to think of what's in here as spell casting, counter spells to work against the dark magic of fiat. What follows is a protocol to protect yourself and awaken NPCs to the magic of Bitcoin. And so the way this is described, the way I use in this story, um, uh, Bitcoin memes and cognitive dissonance is because, again, we're not in the world of logic, right? We're in the world of identifying NPCs and then how to use Bitcoin as a decoder. But that's not the important part. The important part is how to use it to wake people up and how to use this, I call it electrify, how to use Bitcoin to awaken NPCs. If you've journeyed this far, you've now understood the intricate weavings of the fiat spellwork and have successfully identified the NPCs in your life. You've peered into their minds, empathized with their fears, and understood their wants. Now we delve into the most crucial and delicate part of the quest, the electrification incantations. These are not mere words, these are the keys to consciousness, tailored levers designed to uplift, shatter illusions, and, if we're skilled and fortunate, awaken the dormant minds of our beloved NPCs. And indeed, the archetypes of slumber, that's how I thought about doing this, creating cognitive dissonance, because it's not a logical thing. You basically have to break people's brains in order, further break their brains in order to get them to perceive new things. And Trump is just a master of it in what he's doing in Iran. Iran has really become a cognitive trigger in many ways on multiple fronts and multiple planes. It's sort of collapsing everything down into this widespread deployment of cognitive dissonance. And more than any story I've ever seen Trump get involved in, and he's very good at doing this. He gets himself wedged into issues, things become polarized, and generally you get people aligning with the worldview he's dragging people to, and then other people go the opposite way and get this cognitive dissonance. And so here, him expressing just how weak Iran is in this conflict, and seeing the media try and talk about how he's losing and how America's losing, is that sign of cognitive dissonance. Now, again, you can't see cognitive dissonance and diagnose it in yourself. Usually, what you can do is use the framework of hallucinations. So, if we disagree, cognitive dissonance merely comes from worldviews not aligning with external reality. So, once there's a schism there, people get cognitive dissonance. Now, how do you determine? Because in any disagreement, both sides, a disagreement is itself cognitive dissonance in the part of both people, because we disagree. My opinion, your opinion are in conflict. So we're both going to try to realign the other person and persuade the other person so that the cognitive dissonance goes away. And what we can see from the use of it here is, in general, if you have to hallucinate and add information, in general, that's the wrong side. It's not always the case. Indeed, there are times where the hallucination explains it as real and allows you to understand the situation better. But in this case, the hallucination is between winning and losing. And when you see this overlay of winning come to Iran, that's a pretty big hallucination, right? And that's what Trump is getting at here. If Iran surrenders, admits their navy is gone and resting at the bottom of the sea, and their air force is no longer with us, and if their entire military walks out of Tehran, weapons dropped and hands held high, each shouting, I surrender, while widely waving the representative white flag, and if their entire remaining leadership signs all necessary documents of surrender and admit their defeat to the great power and the force of the magnificent USA, the failing New York Times, the China Street Journal, Wall Street Journal, corrupt and now irrelevant CNN, and all other members of the fake news media will headline that Iran had a masterful and brilliant victory over the United States of America, and it wasn't even close. The Democrats and media have totally lost their way. They have absolutely gone crazy. And that is cognitive dissonance. And here, Observing Consciousness puts it much like I've been putting it for a while, saying Trump is exposing something far larger than Iran itself here. He is mapping the inversion layer around modern narrative warfare and showing how perception management functions independently from operational reality. Even total systemic collapse can be reframed as strategic victory once media institutions become psychological stabilization mechanisms rather than information systems. And this is the important part here. That is the deeper signal underneath the rhetoric. The post reads less like foreign policy and more like a live demonstration of how consensus engines manufacture emotional continuity for populations that cannot yet metabolize the scale of global transition underway. And that is what this show is all about, that the cognitive dissonance that's created, that people latching on to these stories, these narratives, is entirely predictable because they can't imagine that the whole world that they've imagined is gone. If you go back and remember what Trump said at the UN, if you remember his speech at the UN, when he basically told everyone in the room, your life is a failure, you're all stupid, everything you've worked for is now gone and dumb and not going to get anywhere. And it was hilarious, but of course he was talking to people outside the audience. It wasn't going to turn into anyone saying, oh, my life really was wasted, I'm going to listen to Trump here, he sounds right. And so it was to perform this direct, just basically putting an ice pick into people's brains and forcing them into some form of readjustment of their worldview, one way or the other. And Iran sits at the center of multiple collapsing power corridors simultaneously. Its energy choke points, its proxy warfare architecture, its intelligence routing, its black market financing, BRICS realignment pressure, and the fading influence of the old London-centered geopolitical order that relied on perpetual instability across the Middle East to maintain leverage. Trump's framing forces people to observe the split between observable reality and institutional storytelling itself. So that is cognitive dissonance by design. That is exactly cognitive dissonance, the split between observable reality and storytelling. And once a population can see that layer clearly, the entire control mechanism weakens because perception stops being fully outsourced to legacy authority structures. And that is exactly what's happening. And that's why the narrative warfare that we find ourselves in is best viewed not through what's the relative power of the US military. Our bases were destroyed in the Middle East. So what? What do the bases have to do with anything? Literally nothing. If the bases are gone, they're probably not useful anymore anyway. So here is spotting cognitive dissonance framework from Scott Adams describing that, and that's resistant to facts, unspecific doom forecast, collapse to one variable, the expand to an absurd absolute. You're seeing this a lot, right? You're seeing this collapse to one narrative. Oh, they lost the military bases in the Middle East. The Middle East is being handed back to the countries that are there, and America's leaving. So what if the bases are destroyed? This is just real estate. They're not rebuilding them ever. They're not going back ever. The cost of war, the cost of violence is changing. That's a fact. The asymmetric nature of war, the drones, that's all a reality. We're at the last end of this armada of American power being able to actually function and project power across the world, but it still can. The difference in cost doesn't matter. If America can pay for it, what does it matter what the war costs every day? It just doesn't matter. We're paying with the old Federal Reserve notes anyway. It's all just money that's going to be completely inflated away and gone. So the cost doesn't really matter. So here, unspecific doom forecast and collapse to one variable is a sign of it, right? A sign of what's happening. Resistant to facts, doesn't matter how much shit is getting blown up, doesn't matter what's going on. You're seeing the proof, and the proof is in the way the war is actually coming out. A fact would be that the Americans prioritizing oil supplies to China from places like Russia, the desanctioning of Russian oil, all shows a tremendous amount of coordination between China, Russia, and America. And another sign of it was just yesterday. Here's Tom Luongo's ARC frame, right? The America, Russia, China bitches, he says. Here again, another day, another desanctioned Russian oil movement from the Treasury Secretary, who's at the core of the American financial system here, issuing another 30-day general license to provide the most vulnerable nations with the ability to temporarily access Russian oil currently stranded at sea. Many people say Russia put tons of ships out at sea ahead of time purposely for this so that they could keep delivering the oil so that the world wouldn't face this complete and total breakdown of oil supply. The extension will provide additional flexibility and we'll work with those nations to provide specific licenses as needed. This general license will help stabilize the physical crude market and ensure oil reaches the most energy vulnerable countries. It will also help reroute existing supply to countries most in need by reducing China's ability to stockpile discounted oil. And so you're seeing more and more of a coordination around this stuff. Again, go back to what we heard here from Observing Consciousness, that these pieces here, the energy choke points, the proxy warfare architecture, intelligence, routing, black market financing, BRICS realignment pressure, and all of this instability. And you're seeing all of these multiple collapsing corridors just come into play. And that's why this Iran war causes cognitive dissonance on a number of levels, and why all of these international things simply can't be ignored, right? It's not about the amount of bullets America has in the Middle East, or rumors, oh, they're running out of missile supplies. That all might be true, but it just doesn't matter. It's not really the important part of the story. The relative strength of the US military, it's like if you play a fighting game in a video game, you can win with full power. You still win if you've only got a little bit of power left. You still win. It doesn't matter how much power you have at the end, how many missiles you have, how much it cost you. None of that matters. What matters is the architecture, the narrative supply chains here that he mentions. This whole idea here of the psychological stabilization mechanisms, and how consensus engines manufacture emotional continuity. These are the important factors here. So seeing the Russian oil desanctioned again is a big story. And then seeing Trump move against the Sinaloa cartel, also important, because again, it shows that the record with China is not clean. They're moving against Chinese interests in America. They're moving against Chinese interests in the Middle East, but yet China doesn't react. Why? Why doesn't China? Is because America's weak? Why did China roll out the red carpet for Trump last week when Trump is taking all their stuff? Why? These are important questions. You can't ignore them if you're going to analyze what's going on in Iran. Seeing Trump now go against Sinaloa cartel, again, this is that same infrastructure that comes from the consensus engines manufacturing emotional continuity. As we've been analyzing for a while, the City of London and all of its gang-related, cartel-related money, drug-related money, human trafficking-related money, all of that is now getting attacked in ways it never did before. This never happened under previous American administrations. Seeing this guy arrested in San Diego is just another sign that he's facing drug trafficking, weapons charges. It's a sign that Trump is moving against this whole infrastructure, and he's moving against this situation that's been going on for a long time. A drug trafficker who surrenders and offers information primarily falls into the category of cooperating witness. We'll see what happens, but here's the fellow who was arrested, and it's just part of Trump's movement against all of this, what we can call scaffolding, the CIA scaffolding. Many people talking about how the CIA for years has been working with those entities and has been keeping the drugs flowing in America for a reason. And so it's not just the ARC, though. It's moving against these consensus engines that are out there funneling all of this money into different proxies. But that's why the bigger story is Trump moving against this stuff. Yesterday, again, the biggest story that I saw from the Iran war from the start was the severing of intelligence gathering from CIA and the national security apparatus in America, and no longer sharing information with MI6 in London, which creates the situation where Lloyd's of London has to cancel war insurance for the first time in their history. One second. So where they have to cancel the war insurance for the first time in their entire history. And so the cause of all of this war, like, first of all, the war insurance thing was never even discussed by the legacy media. It's never even used as one of the important factors to understand the war in Iran, that it is about the proxies and everything else that's going on. So the intelligence severing between American intelligence gatherers and MI6 was the main story. But here, when we see what's going on with Canada, it's another one of these stories. This is the same story as the United States cutting off the city of London when it comes to war insurance. Now they're no longer sitting in joint caucus with the United States military and the Canadian military. They've been cut off as well. US pauses long-standing defense advisory board with Canada, which means they're no longer trusted, which means Canada is on the out now. And people saying, well, that's just Trump being Trump. Remember, a lot of people believe the fentanyl in Canada, the fentanyl in the United States comes from Canada. Now Canada is being treated as a hostile party by the United States. And everyone in Canada, why is this Trump is escalating? The same way they said Trump is escalating in Iran. He's escalating. No, it was the Lloyds of London and the MI6 that tried to escalate economically. Trump made sure the oil got to Russia, the Russian oil got to the market to backstop the missing Iranian oil. He made sure Iranian oil kept going to China. He kept doing all that stuff. And so the only oil he stopped going anywhere was the oil that was going to Canada, the oil that was going to Europe, the oil that was going to these places. And now here we see the Canadians crying, right? How dare the United States abandon the US military? Well, this is why, right? Look at the Prime Minister here and the way he talks about America. And this is the true story. And this is since Greenland, and this is since the 51st state, and this is since Iran. This is how he talks about his relationship with the United States. And this is the real story.
The days of our military sending 70 cents of every dollars to the United States are over.
The progress that we have made in the partnership sets us up well for the new world order.
And don't forget, Carney is there talking to like the vice somebody loser of China. Xi is not in front of him. He's not talking to Xi right now. He's getting no attention, and he just arrived there and he's talking to some fucking wall. Talking to one of those people who looks like the Pokemon NPCs or the Nintendo NPCs that walk around the, you know, in like North Korea. They're all like jumping and all that stuff. He's just talking to NPCs.
Our old relationship with the United States, a relationship based on steadily increasing integration, is over.
We recognize that the relationship that Canada has had with the United States, one that for more than 40 years has been based on steadily deepening integration, is over.
From free trade deal through to CUSMA, deepening integration in military aspects. And that process of deepening integration is over. The old relationship we had with the United States.
So it's a bunch of that stuff. And here is Barbara Boyd talking about how the China trip and Mark Carney and the contrast between them is the real story in Iran and what's going on all around. So here's the real China win, and this is from Barbara Boyd.
Agreed to in Beijing. But the real story is something no corrupted City of London envoy, no Keir Starmer, no Mark Carney will ever have. Trump and Xi have a personal friendship, and that friendship is totally rewiring global economic and strategic relationships. Vladimir Putin heads to Beijing Tuesday to get briefed. And London is screaming because once again, Trump has outfoxed them by just being himself. I'm Barbara Boyd, and I've followed the clash between the British financial empire and now what really happened in China. Well, here's the real story about China. Xi gave Trump a tour of the secret garden housing his government, a tour he says he shared previously only with President Putin. Yes, there were trade deals, but personal relationship is the point. The backdrop. Trump has moved aggressively to take China out of the Western Hemisphere, Panama, Venezuela, potentially Cuba. The Iran war endangers China's petroleum-dependent economy. But while China is Iran's main customer, most of China's oil and gas come from Russia and other Gulf states Iran keeps attacking. So, with all this trouble for China, why does Donald Trump get the secret garden tour previously reserved for Putin? Because Trump is making the strategic situation with China open and stable, just like he did with Putin in Alaska. The US and China are in a race for the scientific and technological discoveries that will define the next generation. The visit began establishing the guardrails for that race based on the personal friendship between Donald Trump and Xi Jinping. Was the Iran war discussed? Of course, including this from the president yesterday. For Iran, the clock is ticking, and they better get moving fast, or there won't be anything left of them. Time is of the essence. Trust comes only from personal friendship. They don't teach that at Harvard's Kennedy School or Georgetown. In fact, they teach the opposite. Here's Marco Rubio talking about the US and China.
And China now dominates that market. So I always said it, and I always said it when I was in the Senate. China's doing what I would do if I were Chinese and I were a Chinese leader. They are trying to dominate the world in all these key industries of the future. We may not like it, but that's what they're going to do because they're acting in their best interest. We have to act in our best interest. I'm the Secretary of State of the United States, and before that, as you pointed out, a senator for the United States.
And that oil shock that was supposed to kill China's economy? Well, cargo to China is getting through, and Treasury Secretary Bessent has lifted U.S. sanctions on Russian exports. Conservative Treehouse makes a similar observation about deepened trust being the whole point of the visit. He notes that right after last year's Alaska summit, Russia started producing massive amounts of natural gas and storing it on ships with no immediate buyer. Was the Iran action being planned covertly even then? Xi plays the long game of physical economic development. He recognizes that Donald Trump is a master of the same game. Trump is seizing the market for oil and gas for the United States worldwide, for allies the United States can trust. At the same time, Trump is making the nuclear investments to lead the next century. That's leverage few others see, but Xi sees it clearly. His economy depends on it. Now, if you're starting to see...
I wanted to get to the one Mark Carney part.
Public. Now, Democrats here and their City of London friends think they have a plan to defeat Donald Trump and his new strategic map. Right now, they're cheering Iran on. They hope Iran wins or at least traps Trump in a long war. Their support for Iran, of course, is only prolonging the war. Blame them for the price at the pump. They've anointed Canada's Mark Carney as their international spokesperson. Carney went to Davos in January and said Trump destroyed the rules-based order from which these people massively profited. Carney said the middle powers must now act together against China and the U.S. Last week, he met with Barack Obama and other Democrat officials to plot their third way in elections here. But there's a huge problem. This isn't Carney's first attack on the United States. His whole career has been spent trying and failing to take down the dollar as the world's reserve currency. First, let's look at London's attempt.
So what's funny here is she goes through a history of Mark Carney's failures. And if you remember, many of you probably don't, but it would have been over 4 years ago in 2022 when the trucker thing started. And I came on Bitcoin Magazine to do a little bit about Mark Carney because that was the day he wrote his letter saying, duh, the truckers thing is so easy. Just follow the money and arrest those fuckers, declare martial law and just go after their money. Duh, go after the money. And so I came out and I did my show that day, and I basically charted that I believed Mark Carney was the biggest financial loser in the history of the world. And all of my findings that day here are reiterated by Barbara Boyd, saying much the same, that he lost just a ton of money. He had $130 trillion allocated to his stupid global warming, zero emissions thing, and everybody pulled out because of how dumb it was. And so she goes through here the history of his failure, the one he made at Jackson Hole, a global hegemonic synthetic stablecoin or something like that. Yeah, here, the replacing the dollar with this global hegemonic synthetic what do they call it? Central bank digital currency. And this is his fourth project. And so not working out for Mark Carney. But again, not working out for Mark Carney simply means that this edifice, this consensus engine manufacturing emotional continuity for populations is not working, because all of these collapsing power corridors are happening at once. And so their ability to persuade is just evaporating. Again, I go back to the whiteboards and why I made them. This was the whiteboard I made when I was living at George Washington's old house, talking specifically about this. I know I bring up this really regularly these days. This is sort of the original whiteboard of this whole show. And this is that consensus engine that we're talking about. This is the machine that allowed for so much projection and brainwashing over the years. This is exactly how it worked, this top-down structure. And this is what's breaking in real time. It's all of these things, just like we heard from this note here, that it is the that it is the energy choke points, it's the proxy warfare architecture, intelligence routing, black market financing, and those are those elements that I put in this bank run world, and those are the things that are getting destroyed. And so even seeing yesterday the news out of Iran that the insurance was moving to Bitcoin is a sign that this is exactly what is happening. This is exactly what's happening, because again, the point I made yesterday was Iran needing to use Bitcoin the way they are, Iran making that announcement about the shipping and the new insurance contract. That's why I see here Mudcast saying the war insurance, the big story is war insurance. Gas is $6. Again, it's not going to be expensive for much longer. The gas is coming down. War insurance is the big story, because if Lloyd's is leaving, and the only way for Iran to make China happy, because China said there'll be no tolls, it's insurance, obviously. And using Bitcoin in the insurance, using Bitcoin as the collateral in the insurance to pay the insurance and to pay out the insurance is basically this new system manifesting itself. And because all of these collapse storylines happen at one moment, that's why this story is big. And it's confirmed here. You see Iran starts Bitcoin-backed and shipping insurance for Hormuz. So having it Bitcoin backed is a big deal. They've already got the Lego video out about it. Here's the Lego video that came out yesterday about the insurance. This is why the insurance is the big story. It's the big story. It's not a little story. This is Lloyd's of London not being able to use CIA ties in order to price war insurance, hoping for escalation, leaving the system, getting out, and then having all of this architecture come in place. And of course, Bitcoin is in the middle of it. Did Iran just drop an AI Lego music video? They did not. This is not them, but this is what's going on. So the Lego video is now incorporating the Bitcoin story. Here we go.
South America tired of fiat pain. Africa rising, breaking every chain. The old system losing its reign. Now the tankers make a new lane. Strait is open, strait is closed. Oh yeah, strait is open, strait is closed. Tankers glide through the narrow gate. World's most vital shipping strait. Instant payment, no more wait. Bitcoin settles the debate. Strait is open. Strait is closed. confirm the sets are sent. Freedom message loud and clear intent. The Strait of Hormuz represents. Strait is open. Strait is closed. Strait is open.
So, I mean, if part of the peace deal in this is that insurance comes out of Iran or the area that's localized and not from the city of London, that's a win. That's a win for everybody. And it changes how this consensus engine, this myth-making engine works. It changes how persuasion works. It goes back to exactly this. This top-down structure breaks. I don't care if America is at the source of the new system. It will be, because of course America has embraced Bitcoin, but that's what's happening. And the ability of this internationalist deep state to continue to use the consensus mechanisms, the supply chain, the narrative supply chain, in order to build this top-down approach, that's what's breaking. That is what's breaking. And Bitcoin entering the chat in terms of insurance brings it back to what I said was the biggest story from day one. Abraham Accords held. The insurance was the enemy. Seeing the insurance be rug pulled from the industry for war, it's war insurance. You don't rug pull war insurance because of war. They did it because the Mark Carneys of the world wanted this thing to escalate. They've always wanted this thing to escalate. So again, you just have to go back and look at the oil flows that from the beginning of this conflict, it was to Canada and to Europe that the oil was not flowing. The oil flowed to China the whole time. It never stopped. The Russian oil was prepared in advance to be available when this happened. And it's not a coincidence, again, that the Federal Reserve subordination is at the same time. The Federal Reserve is gone. It's no more. There's no more Federal Reserve. Even the new money that Trump is printing, I don't think is going to have Federal Reserve note on it. The ones with his signature coming out of Treasury for the 250th, that's been getting people to light themselves on fire. And that's why the whole reality is changing. Here's James E. Thorne having it basically figured out that Bitcoin is now becoming the base layer of reality when it comes to these issues, and treating Bitcoin in this way as part of reality, part of a redefinition of the narrative engines that are out there, is the only way to play the game. What he says in this post is exactly what I say here, that it is now the foundation, that collateralizing Bitcoin as part of the system is about getting away from Keynesianism and moving into this new development, this new sphere. He says, for the record, Bitcoin and the metagame investors are missing. Bitcoin's biggest risk is not volatility. It is that investors keep staring at the ticker and miss the regime change happening behind it. It's a regime change. Even seeing this Warsh guy in the, even seeing Warsh and the way Warsh is going to conduct the job, you know, Warsh is not a Keynesian. Warsh is a guy who actually writes checks. Warsh is a guy who actually comes and builds things, right? He's part of the building world. And so and he believes in the economic miracle. He's someone who believes that we can, through productivity and embrace of Bitcoin, innovate our way out of the Federal Reserve debt. And so here saying the real contest is not whether Bitcoin is 10% higher or lower this week, but who sets the rules that will determine whether it's up embedded in the next monetary system or exiled to the fringe. In Bitcoin, the metagame is the fight over regulation, but we already know that. But this is the important thing. The next Bretton Woods, in which Bitcoin is a design lever for the system rather than a meme for speculators. Day-to-day volatility is just surface noise and a deeper contest over whether a dollar-centric, higher-yield, digitally native order absorbs Bitcoin as pristine collateral and settlement infrastructure, or tries to exclude it and hand it the frontier to rivals. Yes, Bitcoin is digital gold and a powerful store of value, but stopping there is comforting and wrong. A credibly finite bearer asset that can move globally without central permission is an explicit challenge to a model built on elastic, centrally managed money and opaque credit creation. It is not just another risk asset. It is a standing referendum on the credibility of the fiat regime and the willingness of states to live with an asset they cannot print, haircut, or easily confiscate. Underneath the challenge sits the ledger itself. Blockchain is the most significant innovation in record keeping since double entry bookkeeping displaced the abacus, replacing fallible local ledgers with a tamper resistant, globally auditable record and changing who controls the books and who can create credit against them and how trust is enforced. This is where politics stops being background noise and becomes the plot. The Biden, Warren, Powell era of suppressing crypto through enforcement, delay, and regulatory fog is over. President Trump has made it explicit that he wants the United States to become the crypto capital of the world, and a Warsh-led Fed that is openly pro-Bitcoin will reinforce that shift. The project is not to overthrow the dollar, but to use digital assets and blockchain rails to support King Dollar, to build a Bretton Woods 2.0 that makes the dollar higher yielding, more programmable, and harder to dislodge. And that's the world that we're going into. It is a world of bimetallism. It's a world where, importantly, the fly machine, the fly, whatever you call it, the mechanism by which top-down structures no longer are used to manipulate and create these narratives in order to lead people astray, in order to corral them into these fake prisons that they are all in. That's the world that we're headed to. Here's a good way to explain it, I think, because here's Fisher King with an honest question. We love Fisher King. He says in the following: in the Communist Manifesto, Marx and Engels promise a future paradise following a rough period of proletarian dictatorship. They never explain how you go from the rough period to the paradise. Reminds me a little of tech optimism, he says. There will be a rough patch where everyone loses their job along with its sense of purpose and meaning. But down the line, we're all going to be kicking back, being served by robots, living it up. No one explains how we go from the rough spot to the paradise because no one knows. And that makes me a little nervous, he says. Now, when he says no one explains how we go, I mean, that's literally what I try to do here every single day. Explain how we go from here to a paradise. I think we go from here to the paradise by removing that consensus mechanism, that engine that manufactures the emotional continuity for populations. The same thing that we see, that people not metabolizing the scale underway, why fear works, why desire works, why envy works, why all these communist levers continue to work a little bit, but their power is waning. The way we go from there is this. It's getting rid of this top-down order and all the mental illness that comes from it. Once you remove the mental illness, building the future is pretty simple. It's just build. There's plenty of jobs. There's plenty of stuff to do. It's just not the old jobs. It's not the old expert jobs. It's not the consultants. We're getting rid of the communists. And so that's a big change, getting rid of their power to hypnotize people, their power to create this fake prison of two ideas, the power to do all of this brainwashing. Because the truth is, this is what's been going on for a while, even the beginning of the Federal Reserve, right? This is all communist stuff. Here's Colonel Towner Watkins talking about Woodrow Wilson and the history of the Federal Reserve, saying here the whole thing was a scam created by the communists. Fabians, of course, if you don't know, here's a Fabian Society. It is the British Socialist Organization founded in 1884 as a offshoot of the Fellowship for New Life. It is a Democrat socialist state. There's all kinds of history of the Fabians. And it turns out Woodrow Wilson, the fellow who let the fox into the henhouse in America with the creation of the Federal Reserve, was just another Fabian, just another communist. Just when you thought you couldn't hate Woodrow Wilson anymore, find out he was a Fabian. Holy crap. The Fabians in the U.S. formed the American Economic Association, which served as a front for Fabian socialists. One of the first published articles was authored by London Fabian Sidney Webb. Wilson joined the AEA in its formative years, 1893. He was around. Wilson influenced heavily by the same German and British social reform intellectuals as the AEA founders argued that the American system of checks and balances was a relic. We're going back to the American system. He famously advocated for an executive branch that functioned as an unfettered instrument of administration guided by an elite class of experts, right? Wilson's seminal work, The Study of Administration, provided the operational roadmap. So this is the beginning of all these academics. He was a Princeton professor, right? Wilson utilized the network curated by the AEA to populate his administration. When he moved to Washington, he brought with him the men who were products of this exact intellectual milieu, ensuring that the federal government was staffed by personnel who viewed the nation as a laboratory for the social engineering theories developed in the late 19th century lecture halls. And yes, AEA's biggest employer is the Fed, IMF, and the World Bank. So, and then it gets even worse, right? With Soros, part of the same infrastructure. Soros is a Fabian. We see the architecture come back from there, this citing of experts, all of this engine, this consensus engine that was created back then, that is what's breaking. That's why getting rid of the insurance market is so important, because it's just another one of those things where all of these powers in Iran come in that place, come all together at a head. Why Trump creating cognitive dissonance there is so easy, because it's the whole game in Iran. The whole game, everything's come down to that choke point. That's why every thread is tied up in that way, and why every single question has to be viewed through what's going on there right now from an economic point of view, not from a narrative engine point of view. Economics will tell you what's going on. They'll predict where this is headed. And that's what I've been doing from the start. And so when you think of all these communists, Soros, this is exactly what we're seeing. That is what is breaking. It's all of these folks. And by the way, right, when we think of these Fabians entering the government, it wasn't long after the Federal Reserve was created that we started to get this CIA and all of this deep state. And here's another good quote from Colonel Towner Watkins saying, the CIA has never been rogue. So this is in response to this person saying that the RFK assassination is the Rosetta Stone to the JFK assassination. I always told you the JFK assassination was going to come into real view around this summer. This is when we're going to be obsessed with it. Just like 9/11 stuff is going to become a big deal, because we're reviewing history again. We're reinterpreting our entire 20th century. A very normal thing to do when we go through these instances of changes, because that's where this consensus engine, this narrative supply chain, that's how far it goes back. The supply chain was started around this time. And so you've got to reinterpret all of these events. Again, why I was able to predict that RFK was going to be so politically active in this election was because, in the 2024 election and in this administration, was simply because the fight that Trump is involved in clearly goes back to the JFK assassination, when America lost its form of republicanism and we no longer had a civilian control of the military. We had the CIA in control. And the history of the CIA now will be reinterpreted. Here she's saying that the CIA as an institution and not rogue operatives killed RFK. And that is exactly what this person agrees with, saying the CIA has never been rogue. If you think it ever worked for the US government, you'd be wrong. This is the confusion. There are many people that think it's part of the executive branch. While it appears on many org charts, that's provably false. They have always worked for an international syndicate that calls the shots of who lives or who dies, which countries will be overthrown, which elections are interfered with. Its own history clearly demonstrates this. This is what's being destroyed. It's not an American thing. It's some internationalist situation all around the world. And again, go back to how America functions in these things, right? Clarification: the CIA created the intelligence and then used their manufactured intelligence as a justification to interfere in every substantial election since 1947. If they couldn't achieve their goal via interference, they couped the democratically elected government, including assassinations. And here's this famous clip where they admit to all the elections they got into and all the assassinations they performed. And you know it is an international thing, because this is what's been going on forever. Go back and see this analysis of the 24-year British strategy orchestrated by King Edward VII and World War I. Here you can see that all of this narrative engine, this supply chain, all of this was going back then. And this deep state that existed and manifested as the CIA in the 20th century has its origins much earlier and comes from somewhere else besides America. It infected and became an American thing, but not controlled by the American system. It was still part of this internationalist, communist, Fabian infrastructure that came around. And here you can see King Edward VII involved in all kinds of assassinations. And if you go back and see what he did here to get the world ready for war in part of the 20th century, to isolate Bismarck and play off of Wilhelm, the Kaiser of Germany's weaknesses, and getting Bismarck out of the way because of his strengths. Here we see Chancellor Bismarck prevented war for 20 years. His removal in 1890 was the starting gun. Every alliance, every assassination, every treaty that followed was a step in a documented plan to encircle Germany and destroy the European balance of power that Bismarck maintained. Here you can see all of these stories about what he did in order to shape this, to get Bismarck out of the way, and how he used assassinations like the Dreyfus affair launched in France, a Jewish. So first of all, there's first a French president, Sadi Carnot, was assassinated. So the same London-based anarchist network that later targeted McKinley. So you're seeing this Fabian assassination group, all of these communists doing this kind of stuff. Here we see a Jewish French captain falsely convicted selling secrets to Germany. The affair inflamed French politics and anti-German sentiment. At the exact moment reconciliation might have been possible, President McKinley was assassinated and replaced by Roosevelt, who had been tutored by Confederate intelligence figures in London. I don't know if Theodore Roosevelt was involved with these people, but it sounds like this argument says yes. Russia, Japan, all part of the same story. And here, indeed, the royal family, personal ties. As Queen Victoria's eldest son, he cultivated all kinds of court connections. And of course, importantly, here he was called the greatest mischief maker and the most dangerous intriguer in the world. And here he is. Behind the diplomacy stood Edward, Cambridge's classmate, Nathaniel Natty Rothschild. So Prince Edward, of course, friends, classmates with Rothschild, the most powerful financier in Britain and holder of the mortgage on the king's private estates. You have to follow the financial flows. And of course, here, when the Archduke Ferdinand is assassinated by an anarchist, they have all they need, indeed, to go to war. And 6 weeks later, the Great War begins. And of course, here you find out the true story. The war delivered exactly what the anarchists intended. Continental Europe was destroyed. Germany, France, Austro-Hungary, Russia, and the Ottoman Empire were all shattered. The British Empire emerged with greater global dominance than ever. The financiers who backed the conflict profited on every side. J.P. Morgan, a sole allied purchasing agent, Bernard Baruch controlling U.S. war contracts, the Warburg brothers on both sides of the Atlantic. The Federal Reserve, created just 1 year before the war, managed the debt. The income tax, ratified the same year, serviced it. That's all you need to know right there. That's it. That's why we have to reinterpret all of these stories. And of course, here H.G. Wells saying that the don't approve of independent sovereign states, we mean to stop them. And that is indeed the H.G. Wells of War of the Worlds, director of British propaganda, and indeed the entire civilization demoralized and the parallel state stronger than ever. This is exactly what happened last time. And it was with war insurance. It was the bonds. It was the collateralized birth certificates. It was the financial mechanisms that got us in this trouble in the first place. And World War I was really just that whole story. And again, speaking of assassinations, right? Speaking of assassinations, hearing how they used those assassinations and how the British Crown was, and all of the City of London was behind a lot of these assassinations. McKinley, Franz Ferdinand, all of these folks that led us to the war. You can see it again. Here's the New York Times, same old New York Times, giving press passes. Yesterday, we had news on Luigi, the assassin, and here Luigi, unbelievably, here's the New York Times journalist talking about the whole situation outside. It's just too perfect if you're wondering about timing of regime change and everything. The only difference between Luigi Mangione's followers and Charlie Manson's followers are that Manson's followers weren't issued a press pass by the city of New York. So here's the story.
I said what I said. I don't give a fuck.
His children are better off without him. They need to learn to not be like their dad and enjoy the blood money, kids.
Was that What was that? I didn't get that, what you said.
I'm standing on business. Fuck Brian Thompson. I don't give a flying fuck he died. Millions of Americans.
I liked it.
Millions of Americans suffer every single day from the lack of negligence when it comes to United Healthcare. We had a literal infant named Isela who, because of how negligent her health insurance was, she died. An infant died. So if you guys are okay with someone like Brian Thompson being around and that being a part of our society, that says more about you as a person, because you look absolutely monstrous defending someone like that who participates in social murder. That's what we're here to
They're doing the social murders thing again. They're doing the social murders thing again. So here's, of course, Walter Kern. This was the news yesterday in the case. Judge Caro just ruled the McDonald's backpack search illegal. So I guess he had a McDonald's backpack, and inside the McDonald's backpack, he had, some bullets or something. So the search warrant at the time, wasn't a search warrant. So the bullet magazine, his cell phone, his passport, his wallet, and a computer chip will not be allowed into evidence. The firearm will be allowed into evidence since authorities found it while taking inventory after arriving at the police station. Here, Walter Kern says, "Did my predictions from the very beginning of this drama nail it or what? The whole saga was constructed around dreamboat revolutionary Luigi getting off and becoming a political figure." The Tiger Beat goes on. If you don't know Tiger Beat, of course, it's like a teen bop magazine. Son Piker being a part of the same... this is the same type of narrative consensus engine that we're talking about for the emotional continuity of populations during a time of change. This is a reversion to this old assassination communist framework, and that is what will not continue after this. That's what's falling apart, because the good news is we're aware now of this top-down edifice. We're aware of the telltale signs. So on the very day that the McDonald's backpack was denied, McDonald's backpack, okay, remember what I'm saying to you, McDonald's backpack, we are in a war of images. We're in a war of symbols. We're in a war of unspoken kayfabe style persuasion, of narrative supply chains, of perceptions. And so on the very day where the McDonald's backpack is not deemed admissible, you get a weird, funny, but weird note from, of all places, McDonald's. So McDonald's comes out with a pretty wild note, which is the following. So McDonald's comes out with this note yesterday. Nobody understands it. One second. I have a thing. So on the very day that the Luigi judgment on McDonald's comes, we get this. It's just fun, right? But remember, you're in a narrative world. So here's what McDonald's comes out. Ronald, they say. They're wondering where Ronald is, right? There, that's it. This is it. This is the whole thing that the McDonald's put out. Now, he's got the green shoes. So everyone paying attention to the green shoes. So what does it mean? A lot of people having fun with it. So this is Elon Musk the day before the election typing out or tweeting out this. So this is the day before the 2024 election, saying activation word Ronald McDonald with a Q on it. And here's the video that he put out before the election.
Put on notice if you fuck around with.
Remember, we're in a narrative war. You're in a narrative war, and I've been telling you for a long time, Trump uses kayfabe, all kinds of symbolism, and advanced mythological narrative persuasion. And so this is the note. This is the still activation word, Ronald McDonald, timed precisely for this frame, whether you want to believe it or not, I don't care. This is the day before the election, and this is the video that he shared.
With us, if you do something bad to us, we are going to do things to you that have never been done before.
The forgotten men and women of our country will be forgotten no longer. 2024 is our final.
I'm going to get copyright infringed if I keep it up, but indeed, you get it. You get it. You guys get it. Patriots, Ronald McDonald. There was the Ronald McDonald line. Let me get that back.
Patriots. The activation word, Ronald McDonald. We will thrive.
Activation word, Ronald McDonald. So, anyway, you're in a world of persuasion. You're in a world of narrative engines, and that's a narrative engine that's out there. And so, again, the political fight now with the communists is changing quick, because this one of the main tools of this supply chain, narrative supply chain, was the good versus evil framework. And unfortunately for the communists, their ability to lean on the good and maintain the moral high ground is dissipating quickly, because we've got 100 years of them now. It's not the same as it was 100 years ago when the Fabians were operating. We now understand that they're on a Tuesday. I don't want to live in a world where you can't have Van Halen on a Tuesday. So there you go. So here you can see that the rest of the fight and the ability of these communists to stay on the moral high ground is gone. So what persuasion do they have left? I don't think it's going to work. Right here is Christian Hines saying the growing tribalization of discourse heralds the death of the progressive political project. Progressives have totally given up on the idea that there's any sort of debate or argument to be had. They've even given up on the idea that everyone in society can be indoctrinated into becoming liberals just like them. They're now circling the wagons and vowing to defend their own tribe's interests, which is fine in a way. That's still politics, but it's no longer the missionary style of politics that defined elements of the Great Awakening. They're slowly coming around to the realization that enormous chunks of society will never consent to being ruled by them. That won't stop them from seeking to rule anyway or impose their will by force, but it does strip away the most important mythic quality that progressivism enjoyed about the long arc of history. Politics is now just about power. In-group preference and rewarding your friends while punishing your enemies. Progressives can still win on that and rule blue states with an iron fist for years or decades to come, but the ideology itself is dying from within. If you've given up on the central premise, the animating spirit that drove the progressivism forward will be incapable of renewing itself over time and eventually wither and die. Woke 2.0 is going to be far more hardened, sectarian, and quite frankly, nastier form of politics than woke 1.0, as impossible as that may sound. Yeah, that could be true. But again, I think they're losing their persuasive ability. If all you have left are these frumpy, ugly chicks saying it's okay to kill people, you're not really winning the persuasion game anymore. And it's getting even worse for these folks, because the thing that Trump did with this fund is exactly a nightmare. This is using communist slush funds against the system, and that's not going to be good. This is the money he gave, of course, for the when he had the $10 billion case against the IRS for all of their prejudice, starting with the Obama administration years. And now he's he's done this thing where people can access the money. And so it's going to help, right? So hundreds of people who were at J6 were persecuted by this asshole and former DC U.S. attorney Matthew Graves, and they're going to win massive judgments out of the $1.7 billion fund. I'm hoping this asshole goes to jail. So here, this is the guy, of course, the guy who was in charge of all of the January 6th prosecutions was also the guy who led the Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping entrapment hoax. So the fake assassination. So you're seeing all of these ops. Just Trump used their own medicine against them. And that should be the end of all of this stuff. I can't imagine this stuff continuing for that reason. One second. I got to close a couple of these. And of course, the fraud stories are going to continue to destroy credibility of this top-down structure. That's why I keep saying the fraud stories are just going to keep rolling in. It's every day. It's always going to be every day. All summer, every day, forever. We're going to have these fraud stories as long as it takes. Here you get the wrestler herself, Linda McMahon. With what she's found, it's just going to be every day, right? Holy smokes, Trump Education Secretary Linda McMahon just found out that dead people were getting student loans from the federal government. Billions of dollars are now being saved. There were bots, ghost students, dead people getting these loans. We enforced and tweaked the entire system so we have real-time fraud identity now. And that's just another one of these ones. Trump going hard yesterday on election integrity as well. He went to a few states. Now he's gone to Maryland. So I guess 500,000 illegal mail-in ballots were sent in Maryland in 2020. So again, he's going hard on the 2020 election. This was the note he posted in Maryland. They sent 500,000 illegal mail-in ballots and they got caught. So now they're going to send out 500,000 more mail-in ballots, but nobody knows what's happening with the first 500,000 they sent. In addition, many of these ballots went to Democrats. So there you go. More of these cases. That's in Maryland. Now, that's not the 2020. More on 2020. Michigan, right? More Michigan stuff here. This is some of the details on Michigan. So Trump going after Michigan too. It's going to keep going on this way. And here we see that the Georgia case, also part of it, right? You'll see this quote out there. So this is another bit of the cognitive dissonance, right? Isaac Saul. Isaac. Come on now, Isaac. What does Isaac have to say? Of course, the found angle news, right? It's been 6 years. Every single stolen election theory from 2,000 mules to servers in Italy to Georgia suitcases have been debunked, crushed in court, painstakingly explained, and none of these guys will ever have the goods because it's all nonsense to please POTUS. It's embarrassing for Bartiromo. It's embarrassing for her. And here we see some people may not be hip to this because it was 6 years ago, but in Georgia, the Freedom Caucus people sued the state to recount the audit and audit the ballots. The judge never threw out the case, so the ballots were held in evidence for over 6 years. And just recently, it was found that over 300,000 ballots were certified without poll worker signatures. Yes, 2020 was 100% stolen. And they're trying it again. I showed you this yesterday. It's the Google Map thing. But again, just to show you how different things are, election interference in the old way, Trump broke the mold, and the number one student of Trump here figuring it out again. And that is, of course, Spencer Pratt. So election interference all you want. I think the guy has got lightning in a bottle here. And here's his latest. This one is excellent. This is a Fresh Prince of Bel-Air version sung by Pratt himself.
Now this is a story all about how my life got flipped, turned upside down, and I had to take a minute to run for.
And if you're a little older than the millennial set, if you're a Gen Xer or something, you probably don't realize that every single millennial, without exception, there isn't an exception, can sing this whole song by the Fresh Prince, Will Smith, by heart, of course. This was most people's favorite sitcom of the 1990s from the millennial generation. And so every single millennial knows this song by heart. It's no exception. If you start singing it, your whole millennial gang will start singing it. For those of you who don't know the significance.
Mayor, I'll tell you how I became the prince of a town called Bel Air. Los Angeles, Palisades. My backyard is where I spent most of my days, feeding hummingbirds, relaxing all cool, avoiding all the bums outside of the school. When a couple politicians actions, the world to no good. Started making trouble in my neighborhood. I got in one little fire, my mom got scared and said, "You're moving in with Harvey Levin in Bel Air." About 7 or 8, and I yelled to the rubble, "Yo ho, smell you later." I moved to my kingdom, I was finally there to sit on my throne as the Prince of Bel Air.
Too good, too good, too good. Great show as always, Count. Thank you, man. It turns out Trump is talking currently about his ballroom. So I'm going to cut out a few minutes early and leave you with some ballroom stuff. But I want to get to some of the comments here. How dumb young, deep throaty voices and elongate their stupid ass words. The City of London has been a captured operation since at least the Battle of Waterloo. The Red Shield ran a completely successful operation in the immediate aftermath. Trump needs to execute the Bukele playbook on the judiciary. Not ready for that. Not ready for that, I don't think. Elaine's family. Yeah, she exactly is a Dreyfus. Julia Louise Dreyfus, Elaine's family. It not only part of the Dreyfus affair, the Louise Dreyfus has invented commodity trading. She's one of the richest people in the world. I mean, she is absolutely and crazy rich. Crazy rich. For people who don't know that. For people who don't know that. Changing campaigns forever. Thanks, Nolan. Thanks again, Nolan. You got it, everyone. Okay. I'm going to go listen to Trump, and great one today, Nolan. Thank you, guys. Thanks always, Nolan. Thanks for your show. So I'm going to go out here to the Trump press conference, and I will be on Hank's show later. So I'll see you all on Hank's show. But let me get this up for you now. Let me see if it's still live, and we'll play it. Oh, hold on. Yeah, okay. I'll just cut. Okay, I'll just cut. All right, folks. So we're going to cut and go to the press conference. You won't see it here on the chat channel, though. So go on to the other Roxham channels if you want to see it. Thanks, everyone, for your time. Ricardo Bultardo, like the name. See you later. Good morning, coffee time, everyone. Morning, Sugar Plum. Dobes is ridiculous, indeed. Sick win. We like the wins. Indeed. Later, everyone. Peace out. Hope you have a great day. See ya.